Good night, alternate views. Welcome to the show. My name is Kimar Short. Just doing a test for the volume. Let me know if you can hear me well. Good night, good night, good night, good night. Oh, wait, it's not right here. So, good night, just doing a sound check. Let me know if you are hearing me well. Let me know if you are seeing me well. Um, yes, no, maybe so. Can you volume? Good night. Are you hearing me clearly? Yes. So you're hearing it a bit scratchy, I'm being told. Ah, we have somebody saying that we're fine. So, good night to you all. Welcome to Alternate Views. My name is Kimar Short, your host. And this evening, as you guys know, as was advertised, we'll be speaking towards colonialization. We'll be speaking towards what people classify as ghettos. We'll be discussing some ghetto economics tonight and the impact that the establishment of ghettos all around the world and specifically the Caribbean, how they impact on small island states, Barbados, Jamaica, St. Kitts, Bermuda, Bahamas, all over the region. Crime is a international issue. It impacts almost every island and country there is around the world. And akin to crime, if you listen to the stakeholders, you always get a narrative of crime, specifically violent crime, crime of theft. There is usually a class connotation attached to crime, where people who originate in the quote unquote, and just using the term ghettos, that those persons are the ones perpetrating the crimes. So tonight we'll be going deep, and I mean deep, into analyzing what people would classify as a ghetto, where ghettos came from, how they originated. I will be giving alternate views. This is not the mainstream narrative, and therefore tonight is going to be very interesting. So therefore, I want you to like, I want you to share, I want you to tell a friend, to share it to a friend, broadcast through your WhatsApps, post on your Facebooks, and post, share on YouTube. Let us get the algorithm going. Um, Tonight is a very special night, so if you have a young person in your purviews, don't hesitate to hit them on the shoulder and tell them that Alternate Views is on and we're having a very good discussion about crime and what people call ghettos and how colonization, meaning when we were ruled by European powers, how the rulership of European powers led to what we call ghettos today. So let me welcome the early patron supporters. Um, so far we had Junior Rock, who was earlier around 6:30 or so. So welcome, Junior. Thanks for tuning in to Alternate Views. Junior saying good night. Tomorrow waiting for the show tonight. God bless. Thank you, Junior, for tuning in. We have Marcia. Welcome, Marcia. Thank you. Um, Alternate Views is saying good night. Um, there's my Facebook saying good night. We have Miss Rhonda Paris. We have Miss Randy Ford Griffith saying good night. Kimar, good night all. Patrick Green is saying good night everyone. Blessings, Kimar. Happy to be here. Haven't heard anything else on the side. The bill, did it pass or not? Um, I haven't heard anything as well. I'm not sure it did pass, but something to check out. St. Ches, welcome to Alternative View, St. Ches. Good night to you. Good night to Beverly Prescott. Good night to Mildred Payne. Good night to Cecilia Miller. Welcome, Cecilia, and good night to Aisha Harding. Yeah, good night, Aisha, and don't forget to get those lovely natural juices from Aisha coming up on the program. Um, Aisha is the CEO of Squeeze Me Juicy, the brand, and she has the best natural made juices in Barbados. Tamarind, soursop, coconut, fruit punch, orange. Those persons who attended the marches organized by Marshalites and the roadside parliaments would know exactly what I'm speaking about in terms of those juices. So very soon we'll be having a special program to introduce uh, the juice brand to the international world and to all the alternate viewers who watch the program. Good night, Sir Alfred Benjamin. Yeah, welcome Sir Alfred from all the way in the US. Mr. Pollard Stephen, welcome. Sir Alfred, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you for a week or two, so it's good to have you back. Square 4, welcome to the show, Square 4. Happy to have you yet another Thursday. Appreciate your loyal support to the program. So, all 65 of us on here so far. So let us let us share all over Barbados. Let us broadcast. This is going to be a very special program tonight. We are not discussing crime in the sense as what it was discussed in the media. We are attempting to bring alternative views tonight, as especially as it relates to this current situation. So let me get my devices ready. Hey, Sugar King, welcome to the show. Happy to have you on. Um, Sorry, I don't have access to my WhatsApp that I could share further. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in so far. As was advertised, as was advertised, we are discussing we are discussing colonization and colonization meaning Barbados was colonized as we know by the British. If we understand a bit about history, you will know that majority of the if not all of the Caribbean islands were occupied territories, meaning that some colonial power had rulership over it. So we could call a list of the colonial powers. We had Spain, we had Italy, we had Belgium, we had England, Britain. We also had the French, and we had some other European powers who were vying for the Portuguese, who were vying for world supremacy at the time. So, given that, right, majority of the Caribbean islands were impacted by colonization. Barbados, Haiti was one of the first countries in the Western Hemisphere to gain independence from the colonial system. True independence, well, almost true independence, as you say. Um, and many other countries around the Caribbean took the time in terms of gaining independence. Barbados specifically, we know Arabaro, 1966. um, took Barbados to independence, and after that, Guyana and Trinidad and all of the other countries were also inspired to go independent. But if you look at the origin of the concept of independence, Barrow would have garnered that knowledge during his tenure in England, which is a colonial power, right? So being educated by the colonial power at the time, which was the UK, you had some very powerful institutions who were educating barristers and solicitors throughout the UK, and many of those persons who were educated at the British systems then went back into the countries and led revolutions. They led, uh, they went on to become prime ministers, governors of central banks, heads of major organizations, multilateral organizations, heads of the energy sector, oil and gas, heads of investment banks, heads of the biggest law firms in the world, heads of commercial. So these schools in England, and I gave you the example Barrow, um, and you had Forbes Burnham in Guyana, and you had Eric Geary, and you had a couple of other Caribbean leaders who were educated in UK. Well, the UK was a colonial power. So Barbados, being a country ruled by the British, we were pegged to the British pound. The Barbados dollar was pegged to the British pound and not the US currency as we currently see. Jamaica was also pegged to the Great British pound as well. Guyana was also pegged to the Great British pound as well. Right. Fast forward a couple of years, Jamaica had an IMF program, currency devaluation. Guyana had an IMF program, currency devaluation. Trinidad was also pegged as well, having a high value on the dollar, had a currency devaluation, and had IMF programs as well. Barbados went through two IMF programs, one under former Prime Minister Tom Adams, and then the second under former Prime Minister Erskine Sandiford, and the second one being the most difficult as we had to get the 8% cut across public wages and salaries, which was later restored by the ONAFA administration of Parliament. Um, so fast forward, given the magnitudes of what happened, Barbados had to go through two IMF programs, not just one. We signed one in 2018 and then we signed another in 2022, quick succession. So for a country to enter into two IMF programs in quick succession, also defaulting on its international debts, with no natural resources to monetize, oil, forestry, fisheries, productive capacity in terms of car manufacturing, technology manufacturing, processing plants. We don't have those type of natural resources to monetize. So therefore, if you put Barbados through the same rigor that you put Jamaica and Trinidad and Guyana, then you could say that eventually there's a possibility that Barbados may also experience a currency. No, I'm not saying that it will, but based off the indicators and the trends and history, you could say that Barbados is doing extremely well, doing everything it can possible to avoid a currency devaluation. even if it involves continuously borrowing additional debt. So we're borrowing more and more and more and more and more debt to avoid currency devaluation, but eventually the lifeline runs out and you get to the point that nobody's willing to lend you anymore, and therefore the only option left is to devalue the Barbados dollar. Now persons will ask or suggest, if you listen to any of the policymakers, that they would never devalue the currency of Barbados, but there comes a time when the credit card at the IMF and the ADB and the European Union will run out, and we will no longer have the leniency to borrow at the rate that we're borrowing at. Then there comes the option of taxation, tax increases. So it's either put tax increases on the people to pay back debt, if the IMF says no more borrowing and the people reject the taxation levels, then currency devaluation and other options then become possible. These things happen close by in the region. These thoughts happen close by. So I went that direction basically to tell you that we dealt with colonization in previous years. Now we're dealing with neo-colonization, where multilateral institutions through their lending policies put countries in debt traps. Right? So your lending policies put countries in debt trap where they're trapped with debt and interest payments. Then when they hit with hurricanes, they have added on debt and additional interest payments to finance the rebuilding of countries' hurricanes. So it's like countries never ever get out of debt, and there's a continuous cycle of paying debt and interest to the IMF for extended periods, 50-year periods, 80-year periods, 100-year periods. So these factors actually impoverish nations and lead to what you call the creation of ghettos, or quote unquote ghettos, where those persons at the extreme ends who would consider themselves to be the most poor in society cannot withstand the rigors of these type of economic policies, and therefore they fall out of society and participation, because there's not the option of work or adequate paying work. Entrepreneurship, the ventures are not that successful. Welfare and government assistance, non-contributory pension, those social programs continue to be cut and reduced. So therefore you have overcrowded areas with high levels of unemployment, low levels of education, and even if you do have higher learning education, you're underpaid for the work that you do and overtaxed. So the motivation and the incentive to work in high taxation environments is extremely low. So let us get into the depths of what I want to get into tonight. We're up at 7:30 and we have 94 persons. So let us continue to get the traffic flowing. Don't forget to like alternate views. Don't forget to share. I'm seeing Elaine Rivers saying goodnight, alternate views, and saying Marilyn Buffett, goodnight to you. ADG, grade 4, Skylar Watson is asking if anybody could answer Patrick's question. So let me scroll back up. Yeah, like I said, I haven't heard anything lately on this cyber bill, but it's something that we need to check out. So, Ghetto life and how economic policies create ghettos and, well, create communities that are systemically impoverished, and that there's an intention to keep specific communities impoverished by the adoption of specific economic policies. So when you hear the word ghetto, most persons will think on the privileged area, rundown infrastructure, unsanitary conditions, poor garbage collection, poor work prospects, overcrowding in housing, majority of persons on state sponsored, or a few persons in the area on state sponsored welfare, participation in schools low to zero, antisocial behavior like crime and violence and drugs ever present, majority of the population hooked on drugs and alcohol, high levels of domestic violence, high levels of theft, robbery, behaviors on an individual level that would render one to be excluded from mainstream society. That would come to your mind as a person when you hear the term ghetto, and you hear a lot in the music nowadays about ghetto people, and we're ghetto people, and we come from the ghetto, and we come from the hood. But I am here to ask you tonight, alternate viewers, did any of us really stop and ask ourselves where the word ghetto came from? What is the true definition of the word ghetto? Right? I stopped and I took a time, and the term ghetto originated in Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany. And a ghetto is a small area that when Adolf Hitler, as leader of the Nazi party, put the Jews in these areas and clustered them up to separate them from the Germans, or the true Germans as they called it at the time. They were put in these so-called ghettos. They were termed ghettos. So the term ghetto originated directly in Europe, and the first noted ghetto, the first noted ghetto originated in Warsaw, Poland, which is a European country. Now, the word ghetto is used broadly. People who live in the communities proudly classify themselves as ghetto people and ghetto youth, and through no fault of their own, I should say, because in almost every song is something about ghetto, in almost every movie, subliminal programming, the ghetto. I am going to read some facts for you. Right? I'm going to read some facts for you about ghetto economics. I like to coin it. It says that Jewish ghettos established by Nazi Germany, beginning with the invasion of Poland during World War II. The Nazi regime set up what they called ghettos across German-occupied Eastern European states in order to segregate and confine Jews into small sections of towns and cities, furthering their exploitation. There were several districts, right, in which they termed to be ghettos. And how they proposed to deal with these so-called ghettos in Europe was to pack the population, the Jews, in the cities and put them directly on the train line so that they could come in and out of the cities to do work for the state at the time. They pick off some of the most entrepreneurial at the time from these so-called ghettos, like the seamstress, the tailors, the cooks, the bakers, who had the skills, and paid them very minute coppers to come to work, but never enough to get out of the living of ghetto. Right? So here we are adopting a derogatory term directly from Europe. We like to speak about colonization, we like to speak about freedom, we like to speak about black power, we like to speak about decolonizing the mind and moving away from slavery and going to a republic and moving away from Britain. But in the very language that we speak, we tie ourselves back to the colonialists. We tie ourselves back to the colonialists because we have people who are proud to sing about ghetto and ghetto youth, not realizing that ghetto life and ghettoisms originated right in Warsaw, Poland, directly in Europe, as a punishment to segregate those Jews at the time from entering into mainstream society and participating in mainstream Germany. It was a purpose economic policy. It was called a ghetto policy. And Nazi Germany. And this is the government we're speaking about. So let me continue reading a bit here. It says that the German invasion of Poland, the Nazis began to designate areas of larger Polish cities and towns exclusively Jewish, and within weeks embarked on a massive program of uprooting the Jews from their homes and businesses through forcible expulsions. Entire communities were deported into these closed-off zones by trains from their place of origin, systematically using, hear what they use and hear who they use to keep the ghettos intact. They systematically use the police service, or we call the police force. So the police, if you read history, were set up to keep these so-called ghettos, which were the people who the Nazis at the time were trying to segregate, the police were set up strategically to keep those people in check. So the establishment of a police force or police service or police, whatever you want to call it, right? So the ghetto people of Europe at the time, right? Because remember during those times of the World War II, there wasn't anything in America or in other parts of the world called a ghetto. That terminology probably didn't exist. There's a new terminology that originated from Germany, Europe, right? So it goes on to say here, right, that German physicians and public health officials in the Nazi regime chose not to acknowledge specific facts about the Jewish people that were there. And they published essays blaming the Jewish people's supposedly low cultural level, insulting their uncleanliness, and depicted photos of lice and other easily transmitted bacteria and diseases, and they were accused of spreading diseases easily amongst themselves, and therefore persons avoided these areas that were classified as ghettos. Right? At the time, what the German authorities or the German government at the time said about these or the establishment of these so-called ghettos, they were only supposed to be temporary measures. So, for example, you had a set of people who you wanted to disadvantage, you would create a temporary living arrangement, a small plot of land, and overcrowd it with houses and overcrowd it with people as a temporary measure before you attempt to do whatever you want to do to them. Right? So they were supposed to be there temporary. But as civilization and times advanced, you saw these ghettos or these so-called ghetto communities were kept almost as a permanent structure within specific economies and specific countries, that people continue the cycle of ghettoization. That concept of ghettoization after the Second World War spread from Europe, apparently it seeped into many governments' economic policies, because we still have the existence of communities that carry the same characteristics in Barbados, in Jamaica, and in other Caribbean countries. But if you look at the mainstream media and the narrative of mainstream media, they will never try to show you the ghetto or the ghettoized aspects of Barbados. They don't show the ghettoized aspects of Jamaica. They don't show the ghettoized aspects of St. Vincent. Even America, they don't show the ghettoized aspects of America. They show you the improved infrastructure, the large concrete buildings, and basically the state supported infrastructure. and private infrastructure they show you. But the ghetto policy basically says that you keep specific people into these quote unquote ghetto communities so that they continue to work and support the state. Right? So these persons in the so-called ghettos, the policies of the state and policies of governments either work to keep people in these environments or they work to free people from these environments, because traditionally in Nazi Germany, ghettos were only supposed to be temporary arrangements in terms of housing people before they sent them off to exterminate them or kill them or work some type of something on them, put them in concentration camps and other type of things, heinous things. Hey, but you're seeing now in Caribbean countries that ghettos have become a permanent fixture. Well, I don't like calling Caribbean countries ghettos because, in my opinion, and according to the literature, right, let's look at the literature, right? It says that the living conditions, ghettos across Europe varies in size, scope, and living conditions. The conditions in the ghettos were brutal. It says that in Warsaw, Poland, the Jews, comprising 30% of the city's overall population, were forced to live in 2.4% of the city's area, a density of 7.2 people per room. So think about Barbados, where in every house you have 7 people per bedroom, right? The average house in Barbados is 3 bedrooms. The average, not all, but average, 2, 3 bedroom. So every house, you have 7.2 people in every room, every bedroom, right? Those were the conditions of ghettos in Europe, where this so-called ghetto living originated, right? In further across Europe, 700 people lived in an area previously occupied by families, by 5 families. 700 people living in the area occupied by 5 families, and between 12 and 30 people to each room. So then it said that the Jews were not allowed out of the ghettos, so they had to rely on smuggling and starvation rations supplied by the state, the German government at the time. Right? So what support does the state provide to these communities? Welfare checks, and these welfare checks is dependent on the minister, and if the minister likes you or not, or who could call the shot or not to get you on that. Right? If you go into most of these communities, the work that is offered to the people in these so-called disadvantaged communities in Barbados, ash work, road works, and the jobs that, you know, don't create long-term job security. So those are the jobs offered to people in these type of disadvantaged communities all across the Caribbean. Right? And these jobs often don't pay national insurance, and most of them pay very little income tax, and they're very temporary. And most of the jobs are, well, not all, but quite a few of them are actually demeaning type of jobs. Nothing really to offer them social mobility or upliftment. So it keeps them in the state of mind that, we're really living in the quote unquote ghetto. So when a government implements policies, the type of IMF policies that will recommend the cuts in welfare programs and cuts in welfare checks, that would recommend cuts in pension, that would recommend cuts in non-contributory pension, that would recommend increasing the pensionable age. When you have these type of policies, where you're cutting social assistance to people who are on the byline and barely making it, you're actually creating you're actually following the dictates of the ghetto policy rolled out in Nazi Germany during that period. And it was actually called a ghetto policy. Not making it up. I am not making it up. But some things are better seen than, and the imagery, we have to see the imagery sometimes to believe what is being said. So I am going to show you exactly what I speak about when I say the word ghetto. Look at that. Look at the head. Look at the slogan that you see here. Jewish ghettos established by Nazi Germany. And I'll read that section once more. And this is Wikipedia. And it says here again that beginning with the invasion of Poland during World War II, the Nazi regime set up ghettos across German-occupied Eastern Europe in order to segregate and confine Jews, and sometimes the Romanian people, into small sections of towns and cities, furthering their exploitation. Right? So I had to show you. Right? I had to show you. So look at this here. It says here now that ghettos in German-occupied Europe. So when we're speaking about colonization, the very language that we use, the very language that our people use to condition themselves into thinking that they live in the worst conditions ever, by constantly referring to where they live as ghettos and using it as a derogatory term to pull it down. A real ghetto, as you can see here, came from Europe, right in Germany, right? So colonization is not just going to a republic and wearing African hairstyles, and not just that. It's much deeper than that. It's much deeper than that. So let's go here. It says here that the Nazis had a special hatred of the Polish and other Eastern Jews. No, again, all that part. But it says here that they view these people are also the political. Here it is. They view these people are also political opponents of the Nazi Party as parasitic vermin or diseases that endangered the overall health of the German racial community. And the German doctors and public health officials helped advance these racist fear-mongering ideas. And then the German invasion of Poland, that the formation of Jewish ghettos caused hunger and poverty and crowding and unsanitary conditions, which in turn created a typhus epidemic in occupied Poland. And the German physicians and public health officials in the Nazi regime did not acknowledge this. Instead, the German professionals published essays blaming the people, saying that they were at a low cultural level and that they were into uncleanliness, and that they put up the posters depicting the Jewish people, which they transmit diseases from person to person, and they publicize that, right? It says here when they go down that and I repeated that part, that the German forces regarded the establishment of these ghettos as only temporary, right? But you now have a culture who normalize living in these type of conditions and wearing it as a badge, right? So just look at when they come up, they describe the type of ghettos, right? They describe the ghettos and they say here that when we look at what they call the type of ghettos, said to prevent unauthorized contact between the Jewish and non-Jewish populations, that the German order police battalions were assigned to patrol the perimeter within each ghetto. And within each Jewish ghetto, a Jewish ghetto police force was created to ensure that no prisoners tried to escape. There were three types of ghettos maintained by the German government Nazi administration at the time. And it said open ghettos did not have walls or fences and existed mostly in the initial stages of the war. There were several restrictions on entering and leaving. You had closed or sealed ghettos, which were situated in mostly German-occupied Poland, and they were surrounded by brick walls, fences, barbed wires, which were stretched between posts, and Jews were not allowed to live in any other area, any other areas under threat of capital punishment. They were not allowed to live in any other areas under the threat of capital punishment. Right? So let's look at it. In Barbados and in specific Caribbean countries, there are communities where people occupy, in which if you dare come from a disadvantaged community, you need not live in it. Those persons who are much older than me can remember the time when I was told stories where you couldn't walk through places like Belleville, where you couldn't walk through specific communities as a black person, otherwise you would have been shot at, killed, right? Those types of communities still exist today, but maybe not as aggressive, but subtly they will tell you that they don't want you there, right? So when you come from within these communities, right, these sealed off communities, and remember a closed off or sealed ghetto, you live behind a brick wall, fences, barbed wire, and if you ever lived in there, you were not allowed to live anywhere else, otherwise you would have had to face capital punishment if you dare try to live anywhere else. Like Marcia is saying, Strathclyde was one of those areas. Like those type of areas exist in Jamaica. Those type of areas exist in Trinidad. Those types of areas exist all through the Caribbean. Right? And what you see is police, or what they did at the time, was to deploy the police battalion to ensure that you didn't have any undesirables who came from these ghettos and managed to sneak in and live in these affluent areas with the affluent people, right? The police would kill you, they would jail you, they would exterminate you, especially if they found out that you were a Jew. The only job you could have done was be a maid, be a butler, a yard boy, a gardener. As a Jew, that is the only job that you could have done for a German. Degrading jobs. If you look at the structures of Caribbean economies, those type of jobs still exist. When they move the big hotel plants here, look at the jobs that Barbadians get. The jobs as the butlers, the chefs, the maids, bartenders, security guards, and then they give the better paying jobs or the higher paying jobs to expats and people that they bring from Europe and people that they bring from other countries across the globe to occupy your own country, and they get these jobs tax free. Right? So let us go on. It says that the quarters of these ghettos were extremely crowded and unsanitary. Starvation, chronic shortages of food, lack of heat in the winter, inadequate municipal or inadequate government services led to frequent outbreaks of epidemics, which led to a high mortality rate. And most Nazi ghettos were of this particular type. So all of these circumstances were similar across all the ghettos in Europe. And if you go back up to this picture here, right, it says that a total of more than 1,000 ghettos were created mostly in Central and Eastern Europe. And the perpetrators of these ghettos were the other police battalions. Right? So look at it. When crime is on the rise in these so-called ghetto communities in Barbados, who is the first person we call? The police. But traditionally, the history of the police shows that the police were there to keep the communities in line, not to serve and protect, and not to rescue, and not to help solve any crime. The police were put there to ensure that the ghetto people were kept in their place so that they don't have much interaction with the power structure or the elites of society. Right? So let us read here. It says here that the first ghetto of World War II was established on the 8th of October 1939. Can't get that word pronounced. It's too German for me. And the ghetto was established around that time. It says that most Jewish ghettos were established in 1940 to 1941, and many of the ghettos were sealed from the outside, again with brickwork or enclosed barbed wire. And in the case of sealed ghettos, any Jew caught leaving could be shot. Right? And in the Warsaw Ghetto, located in the heart of the city, it was the largest ghetto in Nazi occupied Europe, with over 400,000 Jews crammed into an area of 3.4 square kilometers. Huh? So, so, are you seeing any similarities to the way governments plan their economic policies? Do you see it, or do you observe where a government will seek to pack 200 people in small neighborhoods, mostly squatters living in board houses with no electricity, only a couple of people have running water, 10 and 12 and 13 and 14 people living in the same house, one person working? Do you see similarities across Barbados? So, do you see how the impacts of this ghettoization of the world, which was introduced by what they call this culture, eh, this so-called culture? What's also interesting next, right, is that it said that the Nazi state set up what they call Jewish councils, so that you had basically like representatives, or you had like almost like members of parliament who would have to sit and manage the ghettos on a municipal level. So the Nazis would put these councils in place, and these councils are supposed to see to the conditions similar to what a modern day politician is. Right? So you even had the role of a politician or so-called politician in that you are appointed to the ghetto council, and your role as being on the ghetto council is basically to use the police and any other resources to manage the ghettos in Europe, not the ghettos in America. So ask yourself the question, where does ghetto culture originate from? Right? Where does ghetto culture originate from? Let's check it out. Every other song, ghetto youth, come from the ghetto, happy to be from the ghetto, ghetto, the ghetto, the ghetto, the ghetto, the ghetto. And you have popular singers, popular entertainers, the ghetto, the ghetto, the ghetto, the ghetto, happy to be from the ghetto. How could you be happy to come from or to be part of circumstances which were engineered by policies to segregate and keep you out of enjoying what the state of your country is supposed to give to you? A better quality of life, access to adequate and proper housing, access to clean water, access to space. So there is nothing to celebrate when the government is taking your bread and butter from you and giving you a lifestyle and giving you a liberty that does not belong to you, and being proud to represent that type of lifestyle. We must get out sub of being subdued, our minds being subdued into thinking that we are. But I saw someone here saying that, speaking about the ghetto culture. So I'm gonna scroll back up and get that comment. It says that Yeah, that Hitler's Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, was the mastermind. And yes, we're going to get to Mr. Goebbels very shortly. So Square 4 is saying all of these colonialists in Europe used to have untold wealth, and they were looked down on the ghetto people. Like in England, ghettos they were called slums. Yes, all of these European countries have ghettos, and majority of these European people live systematically and substantially worse than the average Barbadian or the average Caribbean person. So it was not our culture to ghettoize our communities. We had communities, we had life. We may not have had the wealth to build material goods, the castles and because all that wealth was taken from us. But in the communities that we had, there was life. eh. So even in the ghettos, you had persons like these German scientists and these German people who were working on behalf of Nazi Germany doing the and monitoring the results. I know you had and this is just my observation. There was a change in American culture, and when I grew up, because I was born in the 90s, I started to watch BET, and on BET, they say it's black entertainment television. But I was a young boy watching BET growing up, and at first, when I started to watch BET, I would hear Luther Vandross and Teddy Pendergrass and R. Kelly and the more lover boy type music. Like, I would hear more love type music, you know, the more R, what it's called R&B. We heard that mostly on the areas coming on to BET. However, eh, however, then we had the emergence of gangster rap, and the imagery of being a gangster rapper and wearing gangster rap clothes became the fashion or the trend. So I saw that. So I listened to some of the same gangster rap, some of the same music, and that's where I started to learn a lot about the hood or the ghettos, right? So then I realized, and listening to these gangster rappers, a lot of persons were adopting the gangster rappers as models or heroes, or I want to be like 50 Cent, or I want to be like Ja Rule, or I want to be like Snoop Dogg, and I want to be like, you know, these guys. So when you when you have that emerging in the society and it's becoming fashionable that even in the Caribbean where we had there was a in the 70s and the 60s and it, when fellas line at the shop they would say on the corner, you're on the corner line. But now the term is you're on the block. There's no such thing as the Caribbean has no such thing as blocks. A block is an American terminology. They will hit, well, I'm going around the block because there's so many structured buildings that sometimes you have to walk miles just to get a turn because there's so many buildings. So the buildings are settled in blocks. Barbados is not structured like that architecturally. So it went from the fellas living on the corner to the seeping in of American culture, and the language changed now to fellas on the block. Right? So right now, fellas on the block living ghetto life is dominating the narrative as the ones perpetrating the crime in society. I can repeat that. Based on everything I said tonight, the narrative being pushed out there, right, is that fellas on the block, and I told you where that slogan came from, who are living in the ghettos are living ghetto life, and I told you where that also came from, are the ones perpetrating the crime and doing the violence and wreaking havoc in society. But did we ever stop to think about the constructs of how these behaviors got into our society? Yeah. Yes, these houses like Country Park Towers and Kensington Lodge and Haynesville and these housing areas, Deacon's Farm, the Pine Housing Estate, all of these areas, these high-rise buildings are basically foreign European concepts which are imported into the country. It may seem fashionable to be building high rises in Barbados and in other Caribbean economies, but if you look at the building of these high rises, if they are not carefully maintained by the state, if you put poor people in them, you more than likely in a couple of years will end up with a slum or what you call, again, using the word loosely, the ghetto. Right? So you put, let's say, during those times, the Moyne Commission from England came down to Barbados after the 1930 riots, and the Moyne Commission recommended a social intervention for Barbados, and they recommended for us to build these housing estates. So many of these housing units that Barbadians live in, particularly these older ones, again like Deacons and Pine and Haynesville, these larger ones where you have influxes of uh, working class Barbadians, like, living, as you say, whatever. The state has to maintain these areas. The state has to maintain these buildings, these units, and they don't. Right? Many poor people will continue to live in subjugation because they don't have the resources to maintain these type of units. So therefore, they become rundown. They become unsightly. The units become dilapidated, and people live in these conditions. So they're not houses that could be passed on to generations without state intervention to keep it at an adequate level of maintenance, because more than likely the people living in it can't maintain it. Right? So I say that to say that look at modern day Barbados, and in a modern day how Barbados wants to practice economics in a modern day sense, and saying that we're going to put a high rise building. We're going to move the residents from Nelson Street into a high rise building, the old Treasury building. We're going to put the residents in there as a dwelling house. Those type of concepts come from America. Those type of concepts come from Europe. Right? And if you take away personal space and you clump people into these environment, these small housing, these small one room, two room shops, just look at America and the high levels of crime, specifically in these areas that they refer to as blocks. And see that the same systemically, the culture is being passed down through the Caribbean. How it went from fellas living on the block, how it went from fellas living on the corner to no fellas living on the block. To transmit that information, music. So most of the people in the Caribbean see themselves, the fellas see themselves as block men. And block culture came directly from America, which was adopted from ghetto culture, which came from Europe. Right? So we've adopted the ghetto culture. Governments have adopted the ghetto culture and are condemning people across the Caribbean. Governments across the Caribbean are condemning its own people to live in a ghetto life. And I explained to you where the ghetto life came from. It was a Nazi Germany concept in which the Nazis used a ghettoization policy to keep the Jews in subjugation, segregation, poverty, starvation, no light, no water, no technology, working for measly wages. So, in my opinion, it seems that Caribbean governments want to turn the whole Caribbean into one big ghetto. And the way they are planning their economic policies, while segregating themselves, supported by the state and using state-sponsored resources to live a quality of life that is substantially better than the people that they're intentionally putting economic policies in place to make poor. So I hope that what I said didn't go over anybody's head. I hope that what I said tonight resonates. And I hope what I said jogs your conscience to see the wisdom in what I am saying. Right? And to see how a practice which was put in place to keep people down, a practice which was put in place to keep people referring to themselves as a derogatory term. A ghetto is a derogatory term which was used to classify people in which the Nazis were subduing. So no light, no water, no access to resources, measly wages, abuse by police, abuse by council members, no freedom. You're stateless. You have no type of state support. And based off the economic policies being adopted through the Caribbean, it seems that the state is trying to separate itself from financially supporting its citizens and leaving the citizens to completely fend for themselves, right? To completely fend for themselves in conditions in which these governments created. Right? So it was not only a ghetto policy in Germany, right? Because we're gonna get back to that. But I want to mention another term to you, right? I want to mention another term to you. I'm gonna share my screen. We're coming back to Germany now, but I want to touch a bit on Russia now. Right? I ask you if you know what is a gulag. Right? I'm gonna write it in the comments so you know, so you hear the word a Russian gulag. Right? G-U. Right? I put it in the comments. A gulag. Right? A Russian gulag. And a Russian gulag. Right? A, I'm gonna put it on the screen so you can see. I'm gonna put it on the screen so we can see. We need to learn our history. So if we were in tune with our history and act where the archives of this country, which were burned, could have never happened without a rebellion, right? So this is how important our history is to us as a people, and we need to learn it. We need to read it. We need to not let these people destroy the records to change it in their favor. So just like the persons who won the war and conquered it automatically told the lie that black people were always slaves, right? Whoever wins the war tell the story. But as I was saying, um, oh shoot, right. Let me try to get that going again. Right. Pedro, you're saying, but Russia was part of the Soviet Union. It was called the USSR, right? Russia was part of it, so you can't separate the two to say not Russia. Russia was part of it. Right? So the Gulag, we come in there, we come in there, we come in there, people. We just having some. I don't know. It seems to having some internet issues, and we're trying to get this thing up and going. Gulag, but a Gulag basically, I'm gonna read it times the internet. But a Gulag was a system of forced labor camps in the Soviet Union, and the word Gulag originally referred to the only division of the Soviet secret police that was in charge of running the forced labor camps from the 1930s to the 1950s during Joseph Stalin's rule, right? But in English literature, the term is popularly used for the system of forced labor throughout the Soviet era. So the term Gulag is basically a concentration camp, and the Gulag is recognized as a major instrument of political repression in the Soviet Union, and the camps housed both ordinary criminals and political prisoners. Right? So the Soviet Union, their gulags or concentration camps, right? So back in those times, they would have put you in a ghetto, and then from the ghetto straight to the concentration camp. So a ghetto was like a pit stop in between the concentration camp or a death camp or some extermination hit sent down by the government. So these concentration camps, which were housing political prisoners and ordinary criminals, right? Remember, you being locked up during those times for this thing, that they were packing people in these camps. The same thing, just putting you in the camp. So the overcrowded areas, conditions. If you look at the conditions, you would understand what was happening at the time. So by the history, it shows that people were worked to death. They were worked to death in those cities. They were put. There were blocks again of camps which were originally built by the prisoners and run by ex-prisoners. Right? So my thing is, fast forward to Barbados. Right? So you had Stalin at the time persecuting political prisoners. You had the Nazis at the time persecuting Jews, locking them up, concentration camps. So fast forward to the modern day, you have governments. Right? You have governments rolling out a cybercrime policy to create political prisoners, to create criminals, get criminals out of regular citizens. So much that you couldn't criticize Hitler and Hitler's regime, and much that you couldn't criticize Stalin, much as you say, the same type of policies are being set up through the Caribbean, through the cybercrime initiative, to stop people from criticizing the state and criticizing governments from the oppressive policies that they're rolling out on the population. Right? So, if you say something that is emotionally distressful, cause hurt or harm or anything like, you could then be locked up. In Jamaica, the Prime Minister of Jamaica is saying that they are monitoring they are monitoring social media bloggers. Right? So look at the cybercrime bill again. They are using the police force to enforce the power through the cybercrime bill. So the same police that were used and the police forces, the Jewish police forces that were set up during the Nazi regime, like I read it for you earlier, they set up these police forces which were put in place to keep the quote unquote ghetto people in check. The, the police today, the Barbados Police Service and the JDF, the Jamaica Defense Force and Police Service, and the other countries that want roll out cybercrime bills, Guyana, these same police forces are being put in place now to keep people in check. And we know that the laws in these parts of the world tend to be very classist in the way they operate. So if you got money, the laws don't apply to you. Right? So look at what historically I can say this again. We spoke on the show already about the history of the police and how the Nazis Germany set up the police battalion to keep the ghetto people in check. And now the police service in a modern day, the economy is being used to keep people in check in terms of muzzling them. So anybody who criticizes the state, the police can then come in and do the same thing that they did to the Jews. Right? So, as I was saying, yeah, yeah. But unfortunately, Joshua, this show is not about the cybercrime bill. This show, as was advertised, is about colonization and about the ghettoization of economies, not the cybercrime bill, you know. So, um, if you suggest to put the history aside, we can't put the history aside. The history has to be at the front of it because how is it that you have large segments of the population feeling proud to be ghetto people when ghettos were referred to was a derogatory name used to insult people who were in derogatory situations, living conditions, unsanitary conditions, paupers treated as less than. That was recently. That was not 100 years ago. Right? So you can't forget history, or you can't leave out the history. Right? And this is not just a Barbados thing, this is a Caribbean thing. This is Caribbean economies. What happens in Guyana happens in Barbados, happens in Trinidad, happens in Jamaica. CARICOM, Treaty of Chaguaramas, collective economy. Right? So to move forward, you must know the past, must acknowledge the past. And if more Barbadians were into their history, then a lot of the policies that the government is rolling out today would not stand. So a policy to roll out monetary jobs for the whole population, creation of safe zones, the loss of employment because you refuse to take a job, the servicing of remdesivir and medication that we know to be faulty. If we read history, we know that all of these things were done to people in concentration camps. We would know that almost every 100 years a pandemic impacts the world. Right? So if we appreciated our history more, our ancestral knowledge, we collectively humanity hasn't learned from history because we have people that look like us set up to be misleaders, Joshua. Right? We have misleaders, Joshua. We have people who are supported by these types of systems and hierarchies, gatekeepers who are put in place to mislead children, to mislead populations, to get you to sin against yourself and think that it is cool, to get you to take up a gun and shoot your brother and shoot your sister, right? These things happen. And it is not just Barbados, it is the world. The world consumes almost the same. Let's look at it. Yes, let's look at some facts. Right? let's look at some facts. I said, and I would say it again. The reason Africa, or partially, was toppled was because the leaders let the colonialists in. So Africa was conquered, yes, by force, but also by the fact that leaders sold their people into the hands of the colonialists. It is still happening today. Look at William Ruto's finance bill. Look at the economic policies William Ruto sought to roll out in Kenya. Look at what happens with countries that are colonized by France in Africa. You know what? You have a country and your own treasury is not in your country. Your treasury is in France. So you as an African country, you made all of this money from your natural resources and you can't keep your own money in your country. If you have money to develop your country, you gotta go to France and beg France to lend you your own money at interest. What that that just don't make sense to me. So that is why you're seeing an emergence of a fresh thinking, a more true thinking, a more practical thinking. Because the misleaders that we have had, right? The misleaders that we've had, they came in the form of politicians, they came in the form of consultants, they came in the form of lawyers, they came in the form of bankers, they came in the form of entertainers, they came in the form of teachers, right? So when the situation arises now, like what you see in Kenya, when a country colonizes a people to the point that is so repressive that the people can no longer survive and participate, that this economic system of the country has succeeded in sucking the total lifeblood out of the people, then rebellion is on the forefront. Again, we need to appreciate history. We need to appreciate history. We had riots in the Caribbean. We had the potato riots. We had the 1930s riots, which stretched all through the Caribbean. Where persons who were not even Barbadian were coming into Barbados to make an impact on the socio-economic landscapes of this country. Climate pain, right? Climate pain. And we've had persons who've led rebellions. The uprising of people who are completely disadvantaged and who were served with what they call a ghetto policy. And when you attempt to ghettoize a people to the point that it breaks the backbone of society, then there's rebellion. Right? Then there's rebellion. So if our brothers and sisters in the 1930s, which was not too far away, that was not even 100 years yet, yeah, almost there, but it wasn't 100 years ago in the Caribbean and Barbados, we had riots. So I don't think that it is out of the reach of Barbados and Barbadians to rebel if the system they live in gets to the point that it does not realize anything for them, that it continuously realizes all of the benefit and profit to the upper classes, that it realizes complete segregation and exclusion for them, and it also realizes abuse of basic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of access to water, peace, security, the basic necessities. If you are denied access to those, rebellion is surely on the horizon. And the Caribbean showed us historically that we've done it before. So I will ask this question now. Why haven't we gotten to the point in the Caribbean where we wish to rebel against these systems? Is it because we've become too comfortable? Is it because the level of comforts that we got as a people? Is it because those comforts are, we don't want to lose them? They're too sweet. My job is too nice. My house is too nice. Hey, have we gotten so comfortable that we just complain, we just talk, we talk for a day, we talk for 2 days, and then back to sweet living? Hey. And in 1930s, let's look at the conditions of the Caribbean. People were working in the cane fields. Right? People were working in the cane fields on the plantations. Working conditions were poor. They had to work long hours for very little pay. Education, you had to pay to go to school in those times. Couldn't afford clothes. They couldn't afford a fridge and a stove and washing machine and microwave and toaster and cell phone and laptop and TV and car and big furnitures in the house and robe. During those times, people could not afford those things. People had a house, smart lamp, kerosene lamp, a little larder or so they would call it, that they put the stuff in, a little sterno stove. I can remember a little blue and white metal looking galvanized stove that they would cook some food on, and it wasn't no fridge, no electricity, no running water. You had to go to the standpipe. Who was able to afford school, you had to be rich. Again, people living under those conditions rebel. They rebel for better wages, they rebel for better quality of life, they rebel for proper treatment from the state to be recognized as basic human beings, to stop being segregated. But they fought for what we enjoy now. But what are we fighting for? Right? What are we as Caribbean people? What are we fighting for? Right? Now that we are enjoying the comforts of life, I want to say comforts of life, let us speak about what the average person born in Barbados would enjoy. From birth, you enjoy free healthcare at the hospital. We enjoy free school and education straight up to 16, 17. Then we go to BCC, which is heavily subsidized. Then we go to UE, which is also subsidized. We enjoy proper road networks. We enjoy 24/7 electricity in most parts of Barbados. We enjoy running water to most households. The average house has in a refrigerator. The average house has in a stove, a toaster oven, chairs, television, sometimes two or three televisions, a radio, a dining set. The house don't leak on a normal day. We fought for those things. And the state of Barbados provided subsidy to pay for those things that the average Barbadian, instead of wasting time and money trying to get those things, the state provided them to a point. But what we're seeing now is a reversal of those, and most importantly, freedom of speech. And that was given to us constitutionally, right? To be our own subject. But that is now being taken from us. And it seems as though governments around the Caribbean, I want to repeat this, are deploying a ghettoization policy to ghettoize this region and to influence the minds of the inhabitants of the Caribbean to degrade and devalue the pristine privileges that we enjoy in these parts of the world. In Europe, they have snow. They don't get sunshine all year. Breeze winds, cool winds, the best winds, the most beautiful beaches, warm, joyful people. Right? So many people think that going to one of the colonial countries is a sign of advancement. But if you look at life in the colonial countries compared to life in a Caribbean country, the average person who migrates from a Caribbean economy usually migrates for opportunity to increase or self-actualize. So increases in income is a high choice for leaving. But most persons want to come back because the environment, right? The environment. If you go into these countries, you get the patterns. The weather patterns are not conducive to you. So then you go to work in these countries and then you come back to the Caribbean for vacation and see how relaxed and see how privileged we are in the Caribbean to be enjoying way more than the average European who has to rely on government assistance or government welfare, or you just live in one of those places that the government just don't have nothing to do with your period. One of those areas the government classify as a ghetto and they don't have nothing to do with it, period. And you live in those neighborhoods and you're going to apply for a job and the government say, oh, well, he live in one of these ghettos, well, no job for him. So when you have that type of policy where the private sector and governments are refusing to employ, people from certain neighborhoods. So let's say your address is 8th Avenue, New Orleans, or you live in Nelson Street, or you live in Pine. One of those areas they're considered to be hot spot. If it is that there are not saying that there is, but if it is that there are policies where the private sector and governments are not hiring those persons because of their address, then you end up with more criminals than you need in the society because they still have to gain income. So they resort to criminal activity, either blue collar crime for the more educated. Well, blue collar crime, white collar crime. Right. So let me. Sorry. So you get an emergence of both blue collar crime and white collar crime, right? So let me just put a definition and make sure that I got it correct. Blue collar workers provide manual labor often in non-office settings like construction sites or production lines, and their names originate from durable fabrics that they traditionally wear. And white collar workers traditionally work in offices and typically wear white colored shirts. So blue collar crime is the more working class type crime, I should say. So you just have my correction. So you have blue collar crime, which is more working class type crime, and you have white collar crime, which are people who work in offices. For some reason, when the media in Barbados speaking and reporting crime, white collar crime is not put out there and taken as serious as blue collar crime. Because white collar crime in Barbados is often hush hush and payoffs and kickbacks and briberies are usually associated with white collar criminals who tend to be the more educated in society, who work at banks, who would rob the same banks, who would work at insurance, rob the insurance, who would work at credit unions, siphon off monies, government officials who engage in contract corruption and kickbacks. Those types of white collar crimes are hush hush in Barbados, and they're not treated with the severity because we have so much examples of theft and blatant corruption of taxpayers' money. White collar crime, and nobody's charged. Even if somebody's charged, the case is bought out and it is shoved under the carpet. But if a blue collar worker, a laborer, or a landscaper or painter, they're quick to put you in the newspaper. Oh, landscaper charged for murder, landscaper charged for robbery, painter jailed for assault. But when the white collar worker commits a crime, they say man arrested for murder or man um, arrested for something. But they're not gonna put the white collar workers' credentials and information out there like they would put the blue collar worker. Like when you live at specific addresses, again, if the ghettoization policy impacts your neighborhood, if you are from New Orleans and St. Michael, that anytime somebody from New Orleans commits a crime, they are happy to put John Doe of New Orleans and St. Michael's been charged for. I'm happy to put that he's from New Orleans, but as somebody from Millennium Heights or Apes Hill or one of the more affluent communities, they tend to hush hush and shove it under the carpet because it may not be a quote unquote ghetto community, right? So I once heard the former Prime Minister of Barbados, from the short, make a statement while standing at government headquarters in Bay Street. and he said that independence is not guaranteed, that independence is a state of mind, and independence is something that can be taken away from you, right? And the correct set of economic policies can push an entire country and generation like years into the past and keep societies from progressing, right? And the continuation of these ghettoization policies by some of the governments, and I dare say that many of these modern day politicians do not know Caribbean history or do not know world history in general, and they get into some of these meetings and take policies lockstep from persons who are colonialists, and if they are not colonialists, they are persons who were educated at colonial minded schools, and they adopt the colonial agenda from the schools that they go to, and then they interact with the leaders that we have who don't sometimes even take the time to read a book, who can't tell you a couple facts about the history of the country that they represent. Right? Once upon a time in Barbados' history, only persons who own land could be parliamentary representatives. Now there is this dangerous trend, a trend that I'm going to walk all over it. I'm going to crack down every chance I get. There is this trend of saying that only persons who attended university and have a master's degree or PhD could enter representational politics. Now I'm here to pour cold water all over that theory and say I completely disagree with any ideology which would exclude people from serving their countries. The same way that we found it disgusting that only landowners could enter parliament, I find it disgusting that we tell the children of this region that the only value they have is in a university degree. Now, if you want to do anything, you need to have a university degree. I'm pouring cold water all over that. That is also a policy in Nazi Germany, where the German state picked off the brightest minds and gave them more than the others, gave them a better access to resources, gave them transportation, gave them lodging and housing, put them in the offices to work, and then they believed that they were better than the others in the society, and they completely turned their backs and became enemies of the people that they came from among. Right? So we are attempting to recreate that same dangerous narrative. We want to pick off these so-called intellectual high flyers, treat them better than everybody else, and then tell the majority of the population that because you did not go to university, you cannot participate or contribute. So I pour cold water on it. And I will never accept it as fact. Even if I myself go on and get master's, PhD, I could get the whole alphabet. I still do not agree with it. Because they are saying to the businessman who did not do well at school that he can't service, he has 500 employees constantly having families at work, put food on the tables, but you're saying to him because he didn't go to university, a man that's contributing millions of dollars to the economy, that he's unworthy of serving his country because he don't have a paper degree. You're saying to persons, mega millionaires who got wealthy through entertainment, who got wealthy through inheritance, and who got wealthy through other means other than being a university academic. You are saying to them that they are all unworthy to create a society where a small few of university graduates control the entire population. And these were all functions of Nazi Germany in ghettoizing Europe. Right? So our society, which was a society that had its own moorings, we've completely adopted the colonialist way of living, calling ourselves ghetto people, and I live in the ghetto. And then you have some who make it out of these circumstances saying, oh, I'm better than them. I'm better than them because master treats me better than he treats them. Right? We are following the colonial way. So therefore I'm saying power to the people in Kenya. Right? I'm saying power to all of those movements who are there to bring the countries into truthful alignment. I'm saying power to the Gen Zs and power to the to I let me say this. I believe in generational leadership. So you will never hear Key Short talking about only young people. I believe in leadership, multi-generational leadership. So I want seniors and elders advising me on the best way to go. I want middle-aged persons also advising me and teaching me the road to go because they have more experience. And I also want the young upfront benefiting from the experience of the elders, the guidance of the elders, because that is the way of life. The elders been there, done that, they know how, and they can give the youngsters the guidance and the insights and the strength and the confidence to go there and manage their affairs. Because the impacts of colonialism has psychologically impacted the region, taken the voice. I dare say I have taken the voice because since those riots in the 1930s in the Caribbean, we have not had any type of serious revolutionary uprising in terms of a change of path or journey as it relates to Caribbean economics. All of the Caribbean economies are basically the same. One monotonic type economy focusing on tourism and tourist dollars, international business, hotels. Majority population of hotel workers, when a hotel worker is a government worker. Poor roads, poor housing, poor government housing that is, sorry. Difficult to get access to the financial system to borrow loans and develop itself. Majority of the population in debt. Most of the population in the Caribbean don't even follow the dictates of the governments anyhow. They follow the dictates of celebrities, American celebrities. Right? So this is a Caribbean thing. The riots in the 90s were a Caribbean thing. And we are overdue. We are overdue. A revolution of thought, a revolution of ideas. We need new ideas to run a modern Caribbean because the old structure, which was handed down to us, a structure where we have been given leaders. Right? I'm here to dispel a notion. I'm here to dispel a notion about parliamentary democracy in the Caribbean. I'm here to dispel a notion about parliamentary democracy in the Caribbean. We have not elected a single leader in Barbados or in any country that practice Westminster politics. We have not elected. Persons say, I voted for Prime Minister Mia Motley to become Prime Minister. No, you did not. I voted for Prime Minister Fernando Stewart. I vote. No, you did not. I voted for David Thompson to become Prime Minister. No, you did not. I voted for Owen Arthur. No, you did not. We've never voted for a Prime Minister. The construct of our parliamentary system, we elect individual MPs. Every member of parliament is in there on its own. He's an independent MP, an individual MP. And a Prime Minister is chosen by the 30 members of parliament. So the people that we voted in the parliament, they're the ones who voted for a Prime Minister. So I will repeat that. We have never ever elected a leader. A leader was never ever democratically elected across the Caribbean to say we voted in Prime Minister Mia Motley as Prime Minister. That's not the way our system is set up. Not the way our Westminster system, which was handed down to us by the colonialists. You have never voted for a Prime Minister. You have voted for members of Parliament and the Constitution of Barbados, which was basically the Independence Order of 1966, handed down to us when our Barrow established it from England. Right? Says that those who win a seat would pick amongst themselves, the majority would pick who is to lead them, and then that person becomes the Prime Minister. So if the people keep saying, oh, we want to remove the Prime Minister, we want to remove the Prime Minister. To remove the Prime Minister, you have to petition the members of Parliament to put a vote of confidence in another member of Parliament. So Ralph Thorne can become Prime Minister of Barbados without election. The opposition leader, Ralph Thorne, could become Prime Minister of Barbados tomorrow. In fact, he can become Prime Minister right now without an election. Because if the members of the Barbados, if the members in the House of Parliament, all other 29 of them, Peter Phillips, this is, I talk about party, I'm talking about MPs. We don't put parties in Parliament, we put MPs in Parliament. If the other members of Parliament decide we no longer have confidence in Mia Motley, we want Ralph Thorne to become Prime Minister, the only other option Mia Motley has is to prorogue Parliament and call a general election. Because out goes her and in goes Ralph Thorne. Without a general election. So I am saying to you, alternate viewers, We have never elected our leaders. Our leaders were chosen by the members that we put in parliament. And if tomorrow the members of parliament of Barbados decide that they want a new prime minister, there's nothing Mayor Motley or anybody can do about it. If the members of parliament decide tomorrow they want Sonia Brown to become prime minister of Barbados, Mayor Motley's goose is cooked for sure and outgrows her. That is the nature of what democracy we have in this parliamentary system that we call Barbados Westminster politics. That is the nature of it. So, I am giving out the solution for free. I'm giving out the solution for free. I'm giving out the solution for free. Based on our parliamentary system, if we want to remove the current prime minister that Barbados has, we have to petition the members of parliament to collectively, we have to get the majority. So you have to get 16 of them. About 15 because you have the opposition leader. So if you get 15 of the members of parliament to agree to go to the president of Barbados, Sandra Mason, right now, somebody else becomes prime minister of this country. So if we want to do it, that is the only practical solution based off our parliamentary system. And that's the way it could be done. So don't let the propaganda and the ministers of propaganda, don't let the modern day Joseph Gibbles confuse and trick you into believing that the prime minister is all powerful. The prime minister serves at the discretion of the other members of parliament. So the MPs have the power. So the MPs of Barbados and also the MPs to the Caribbean tend to make the prime minister all powerful because the prime minister is the one who controls the cabinet. So to become a minister and to get the lifestyles and quality of a minister, members of parliament pledge the loyalty to the prime minister, and the prime minister in turn rewards them with ministries. So if the MPs of Barbados wanted to change or a new prime minister, they could pick any one of them and get 15 other votes and quick like that, Mayor Motley is the opposition leader. No questions asked. Well, she has the power to prorogue parliament, I should say. She has the power to prorogue parliament. So she can send them scattering in a general election. She has that power to call election at any time. So that is a trump card. That is a trump card that the prime minister will have if the members of parliament decides that they want ouster. That's a privilege that Caribbean prime ministers have. They don't have a set date to call election, and they could call election when they want. So if you try to oust them, they call election and scatter everybody. So I hope you understand what I said just now about parliamentary democracies in the Caribbean. Something that was inherited by the colonialists, the first past the post system. We had political parties which originated from the time of the colonialism. We had the PNP in Jamaica, the GLP. We got the DLP and the BLP in Barbados. We got the FNM and the PLP in Bahamas. We got the PLP in Bermuda and the OBA in Bermuda, the one Bermuda Alliance. We got the SLP in St. Lucia and the UWP. We have situations in Barbados and St. Vincent where the St. Vincent Labour Party had to shut down and form a new party, and nowadays we will get the Unity Labour Party. So even inheriting the political system and political parties, some of them have died and they had to rebrand themselves and refashion themselves for a more modern electorate. Right? And a more modern electorate, it seems as though these Caribbean governments always tend to rely on a ghettoization policy and keeping certain sections of the population subdued and into a ghetto way of thinking, which is retarding the progress of the people and encouraging other groups to immigrate into the Caribbean economies and gain substantial wealth. You have a more Indian type investor or a more Indian looking type face dominating the economic landscapes. And their systems are working for them. They are now the owners of the transportation systems. They are now the owners of housing, the owners of substantial plots of land, all of the household items that we buy, coolie man. But they don't go in the severance line. They don't go in the unemployment line. They have access to mezzanine finance, Islamic finance, where they could borrow money at no interest. They don't wait on governments to do that for them. In fact, governments go to these communities to beg for money to help party and fed and put the persons under the ghetto policy in further subjection. Allow these minority groups, I ain't saying the boys specific, but minority groups in general, to import guns and drugs and other illicit activities to sell to the same black people. I've said it on other podcasts and they're going to say it on alternate views. No. The crime situation in the Caribbean is impacting directly on young black boys. The crime situation in the Caribbean is impacting on young black boys. Not Indian boys, not white boys, not mixed boys. Young black boys are dying by the gun in the Caribbean. But still we got young white people, young Indian people, young Syrian people. But they ain't dying. They are not the ones being shot. The young females are not the ones being shot. Right? The young females are not the ones being shot. White nor black. Right? So you push the young black boys into the drug trade, the firearms trade. That is a part of society. And there's really reference Joseph Goebbels now. Goebbels said, and their propaganda designed to make these ghettos fashionable. Right? You put those young black boys in a space and you allow them to operate outside of the normal rules of society. They operate outside the normal rules of society. So when you operate outside of the rules of society, remember the history lesson we spoke about, that police are the ones there to bring the ghetto people back into line. So when it's not the police shooting them down, or the police beating them up, or the police coming in with guns on the so-called blocks and corners and beating them up, is their own brother or so from around the corner or from another neighborhood. They're shooting and killing one another. And most of the time, some type of drug, the trade of some type of drug is involved. The trade of some type of firearm or so is involved. And also the trade of humans, because men fight a lot over women. So most of the violence were handed down through this ghettoization policy, where gang banging and block hanging and these type of activities provide the income that these young black boys need to get social mobility. So they go and engage in the illicit trade of these items, because when you have this ghetto policy, part of the rollout is also the trade of illegal substances. Get them hooked on drugs. So, similar to how former Prime Minister David Thompson sounded the warning about crime and violence, Kimashore is sounding the warning to Barbados about a drug endemic that is going to plague Barbados in years to come, where mental and psychological problems will be plaguing the society because the young people of Barbados are hooked on hard drugs like LSD and mollies and codeine and cocaine and the hard stuff, along with the importation of foreign alcoholic substances. So, we don't wish for these things to happen, but in years to come, similar to the drug problem that America has, which they don't ever seem to speak about, because a country that had a war on drugs but has per capita the most drug users, and I mean hard drug users, the harder drugs that we just explained, that culture is taking root in the Caribbean, and the use of these psychedelic drugs is heavily correlated to the impact of and the increase of these murders and violent crimes. And I put that analogy out there, and I dare anybody to challenge my findings. Hard drugs. And the Caribbean, if you don't be careful, we are going to have a society of zombie looking people who just hooked on hard drugs. I don't think we want that. We do not want that. So before we get too far on this thing, government needs to roll back this ghettoization policy. We don't need more ghettos, but we need the deconstruction of this ghetto way of thinking and ghetto way of life, and get that scourge off of our people through the Caribbean. But it can only come through a revolution of thought and a revolution of ideas and a revolution of systems and a ascension to the true way of life and alignment for people in the Caribbean, and not getting back, because I would say that we were confused and misled. But we need to come forward. Barbados and the Caribbean need to come forward and move forward out of the mental gulag and out of the ghettoization that was handed down by the colonialists to further destroy societies in the Caribbean and destroy societies and forcing people to adopt derogatory and degrading lifestyles and to be proud about them, even passing them down to the next generation and further destroying societies. So with that being said, people, we are at 9:30 and we are at the end of Alternative Views. Let me acknowledge tonight the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute. Um, Good evening to you. Let me thank you all for tuning in to the program. I had a very good discussion tonight. I, I enjoyed having this discussion, so we're going to do a quick wind up. We're going to do a quick wind up and we're going to try to go through some of the comments quickly before we completely shut off. But I hope tonight was um, eye-opening for you to say the least. I hope that I would have sparked something in your minds. I hope that I would have encouraged you to want to tell somebody what we spoke about tonight. I hope that I would have encouraged many of you also to have the boldness to start to address these conversations and to address these hard topics that social media influencers and politicians and people who think they will not want to do it because they're afraid that they will lose support. But we are not afraid. We are not. That's not our type of politics. That's not the way we do things at Alternative Views. Alternative Views is here to jog the mind because Alternative Views practice what we call lateral thinking. And lateral thinking, sometimes called horizontal thinking or divergent thinking, is defined as an approach to problem solving that strives for creative solutions rather than the more straightforward answer. Through spontaneous, free-flowing brainstorming, lateral thinking disrupts traditional step-by-step thinking patterns to develop as many very creative ideas as possible. And that's what alternative views is about. A space for lateral thinking, where we get the orthodox ideas, we get orthodox conversations, we see the other side, we see the alternate view as opposed to the extreme view of economics, of societies, of law, of politics, and of life in general. So, let me just gather some comments. There's so many comments. So many comments. Well, Simone Dial is saying that she noticed news outlets not broadcasting what's happening in Kenya because they want people getting ideas. Well, when the revolution is ready, it will be sparked internally and there will be nothing the elitists could do to stop it. Lemuel is saying Africa got rid of its most progressive leaders with the help of former colonizers. Joshua is saying the roots of black people are rooted in spirituality. Until they find that truth, life will be always a get rich or die trying struggle in constant cycle. That is very true, Joshua. He's saying that Simone Dial is saying that I don't think Barbados can stand alone, but the righteous alliances will make a difference. I'm sure if ferry to West Africa, whether Senegal or Angola should take 3 to 4 hours so we can trade in other ways. Yeah, but I think I gotta do a show specifically on the African mentality and the African mindset. I think we get some misconceptions about this connection that we're making with Africa, and I think we're gonna definitely touch on that. Jabbar and Dale is saying that we as a people have to learn from this last war virus called COVID that these people don't care about killing us off yet. Still, we just doing a lot of talking and not uniting. They don't care about us killing us off, yet we're still, yeah. Yeah. Joshua is saying, actually, generally speaking, this generation is the most free so far with everything at the fingertips. No more drinking boards. And that's true, that's the point we were making. We don't have drinking boards, no, we have washing machines. So how now do you, before you had to cater for somebody with a drinking board mindset, but now you have to cater for somebody with a washing machine mindset. Because the persons who would have been using drinking boards, they don't. So do you see the change in the times? You see how governments have to update themselves constantly because technology is growing. People's access to technology is becoming more easier. And therefore the governments have to keep improving, but for some reason governments are still deploying the old colonial policy of ghettoization, and they're ghettoizing the people. Right? So that needs to be cut out. Right? Joshua is saying good question with all that's happening. What are we really fighting for? I agree, Joshua, there's nothing left to fight for. We're not fighting for, I mean, we're fighting to get the prices in the supermarket coming along, yeah, but that's not our biggest problem in life. But what is there left to fight for? Marcia is saying that has to be a hell of a religion to bring people to that way of thinking. Joshua is saying Christianity and the King James Version Bible F interpretation interpreted fully as written will keep you poor. Simon is saying that the missionaries bearing the cross of Constantine were sent to the arrival of the armies. Pedro is saying we inherited those things. We have to fight now. Joshua again is saying poor is a state of mind. Square 4 is saying the IMF to have these items you list there. They're saying these things are luxury. And this is so true. The IMF told Barbados that free public education is a luxury. It's not right. And that the people of Barbados don't have to have it. Free healthcare is not, they don't have to have it. Because there are other countries in the world that people have to pay for these things. But Barbadians get it for free. Yeah. So, Marvin Marius is saying we are fighting for equal economic opportunity and enfranchisement under these laws, opportunities to build generational wealth, viable contracts for black businesses. Hmm. Joshua is saying most want to have a 9 to 5 job, but one job can't get you anything. Charlene Clark is saying good evening. This information is very appropriate. Strength comes through real information and spiritual discernment. Given the nature of this society, drugs and crime will always exist. Um, Jabbar is saying that the Caribbean is being put to test now for what's coming next. This is why they're going into Haiti. Our people have to start killing out each other and prepare for this war ahead. Yeah, when you kill each other, you're making their job much easier. So they actually like the fact that we're killing one another because they don't go do it. And funeral business is big business. There are many funeral homes pop up during COVID, and I can show you that the funeral homes ain't crying out for being broke. Let's look at the amount of deaths in the Sanderson. 4 and 5 and 6 pages of deaths, deaths, deaths. So the funeral homes are definitely making a lot of money. So when we kill each other, we're actually making our contributions to the system same ways. Yeah, Joshua said, honestly speaking, Caribbean people don't read much, reading to educate themselves or elevate for a better word. Let me tell the same white collar crime includes embezzlement, bribery, and corruption. The Abbas agreed with me when she said that a university should not be criteria to serve the country. Simone Dias said, rather a shopkeeper run the country than someone that just went over in a way to get some degree. What has the current PM ever developed or run, getting rich off continuous kickbacks? Marvin Morris is saying, power to the tradesmen, power to the mothers and fathers, power to the teachers, the farmers, policemen, power to the health professionals. True, power to all those people. Basically saying, well said, Kimura, we need all the ages as a positive collective. Yeah, yeah. But I tried my best to uh, read, but there's so many comments, so I can't take all. Um, yeah. So I saw being dragged in there. So good night to you, being dragged. Good night to everybody else. Judy Jokes. Good night to Square Four. Simone Daniel. Patrick Green. Good night to Rosetta Bishop. Good night to Monica Inks. Yeah. Good night to Andrea Moore. Good night to Jude Lawrence. Good night to Michael Fields. Good night to all. Boy has the name as all. Yeah. And good night to all of the people in the parish of St. John, Barbados. Um, good night to all of my St. John people. Sure, I saw Fabian Yard on there. Tyrone Nurse. Not seeing my Mr. Angel. But good night to all of my St. John people. Good night to also my people in the city of Bridgetown. Can't forget the city. Good night to my people in St. George, St. Lucie, St. Philip, Christchurch, all of St. Michael, St. Peter, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, St. Joseph, all over Barbados, all over the diaspora, all through the Caribbean. I am Kimar Short, and I have come to the end of another alternate view. I wish to also announce that we'll be having a fundraiser next week, Saturday, to aid a colleague of mine, a friend, somebody who's very important to me. We'll be announcing the details very soon on our pages. We'll be having a fundraiser to assist him in his plight. He had a very serious accident, and therefore we'll be going ahead and hosting a charitable event to help raise funding to get him back on his feet. We will put out the notices that you could learn about it. We're doing total transparency, so you will put out the post that you can see. And next week Saturday we'll be having a special fundraiser to help, and all the proceeds will be going towards a gentleman who has had a really bad accident, a really terrible accident, and he actually went to death doors. But he's coming around. But we're going to aid and assist him because this is what we're about. We're about community, we're about camaraderie, and we're about being our brother's keeper. We don't have to wait until the state um, plays their part. We play our part as well. And in this specific community or in this nation, right, In this nation that we have here on Alternate Views, we have community and we have a nation. So we have people all over the globe who watch this program. So within this nation, we are our brother's keepers. So stay tuned for those details, and um, we're gonna make some requests of you, and we hope that you find it within your hearts to help this gentleman out. So as I said, the information will be forthcoming very soon. So thank you very much, everyone. We've come to the end of the program. Had a very good discussion. Alternate views. Tune in next week. Tune in tomorrow at the Master Civics program, 7 o'clock. And in the meantime, have a good evening. I will see you tomorrow and next week, Thursday, by the way. So goodbye, alternate views. Have a good night. I hope to see you next week. Goodbye, my people.